morning and salamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for CISNA's Leadership Institute. We are going to be looking at strategic planning as well as budgeting protocols. It's something that every school absolutely needs. It's very critical because, well, you need to know where you're going. I'm Susan Labadi. I'm on the CISNA board, and I would like to introduce to you our two speakers for the day. We have Sister Magda Elkady, and we also have Brother Ahmed Abuabdou. So if you would like to start, Sister Magda, can we take your PowerPoint up there for everyone to see?
I'm going to ask for a 1 minute allowance.
You have as much allowance as you need.
I'm going to try and get into my actual presentation.
All right. For those of you just joining, Sister Magda is a true trooper. She was locked out of her office and therefore needs to go to plan B. And we all know what that can be like, don't we? Especially when you're using technology.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So can I can share screen. Very nice.
You bet.
Okay. We're up, right? Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Good morning, everybody. Alhamdulillah.
Interesting morning.
And oh, for sure, alhamdulillah. But that's how leadership is, right? Never
Absolutely.
A dull moment and never the same every day. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. And I apologize for the lighting because this is not my office and I'm not sure exactly how to get the lights to work as well as they should. But I am the head of school at Magda Elkady in Tampa. We have 2 small campuses and we are looking to build one large campus to encompass all of our grade levels, inshallah. We're a pre-K through 11 school. Next year, we'll have our first 12th grade and our first graduating class, inshallah. This is my 3rd school. My track record seems to be 11 years at each school. I've guided each one through 2 accreditation processes. This one, this school, Magda Elkady, we just got accredited last year, alhamdulillah. And again, for all my mishaps this morning, thank you, Sue, for even considering me for this presentation. Alhamdulillah. Strategic planning.
Are the expert that I truly trust on this matter. So you've been going through so many schools, you know what it's all about.
Okay, so.
And we should mention also your work with ISNA, of course, that absolutely entails strategic planning as well.
Yes, and I took on the strategic planning job for ISNA, which we will be starting next month, inshallah. So this was good preparation.
You verified my right, correct decision here. All right.
Okay. Oh, what did I do? Sorry about that. We're working on this. I need to copy this link and put it into the chat. Let's see. We're not as good as we thought we were yet.
We can go to menti.com, I think, and do that ourselves, right?
Trying to see. No, I can get the chat box. Maybe. I can't see. Oh, here it is. I'm going to go ahead and copy it, paste it, and everybody should have it.
Okay.
Okay, so I like Menti, and if you haven't used it at your school, it's a pretty good little tool, but it does make people have to interact. So inshallah, if everybody can go to the link, click on the link and put in what is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear strategic planning. And we'll see how that looks between now and then. Okay. And how many people do we have with us right now, Sister Sue?
You're a total of 8.
8. Okay, so we have 2 out of 8. We're at 25%. I'm not going to count myself, so just above 25%. Anybody else have anything that comes to mind? Maybe an emotion? Any emotions that come to mind when you think of strategic planning? I'd love to give you some samples, but I don't want to bias the vote. So 3 out of 7. Sister Sue, are all of our leadership participants usually this active?
Yes.
Can I ask that they turn on their videos, or is that a problem?
Absolutely.
You know me, I like to do face-to-face presentations. These Zoom ones are just not what I like doing as much as the face-to-face. So I don't know if the administrators have the ability to turn on their videos.
Sister Farah is texting that she's active. So there you go.
What do you mean that she's active?
Farah, I'll let you explain. You can go on anytime you want to unmute.
Okay, can people unmute? Are they?
Assalamu alaikum. Sister Sue just made a comment about being active. So I'm active right now, but I'm without my scarf.
Oh, okay, so Sister Sue, I'm going to suggest that for the future sessions. I mean, I'm not part of.
Yeah, I'm
SISNA,
going to go and get it right now.
but I
I'll
think
grab it right now.
all participants should be visible so that we can actually collaborate with them, because collaboration is key with everything we're doing, inshallah, as school leaders. So we have 3 out of 7. I pray that your staff members at your schools participate more when you do trainings. Anybody have any feelings about excitement, fear, frustration, apprehension when you think about strategic planning, or everybody is just really ready to go and ready to jump into it?
I think really I feel excitement about it because we're designing the future. So there's a certain happiness, as Sister Farah had mentioned, and just a warmness, a feeling of being together, which I think is very much lacking in many people's lives these days, especially since COVID and lockdowns. So it's a great time to look at our futures and consider strategic planning for very many reasons.
Did you enter happiness? How did you see happiness, Sue?
Farah had put happiness in the chat.
So not responding to the mentee. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. We're going to see how this is going to work out today.
Or perhaps you already did respond to mentee, but then maybe you couldn't put a second, comment in. I'm not sure.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. So strategic planning in your school, and that is the key reason we're here this morning, to look at strategic planning, how it's done, who does it, what you know about it. And so I want to go through some of these questions just before we go on, and I really do need participation. I can't do that. If everybody can unmute, unless you have like a symphony going on in your kitchen, or kids banging on pans, if you can please unmute yourselves. This is going to be challenging for me, Sue.
But you're the gym master teacher, so I think we'll get through.
I can't do the, if you can hear me clap once, if you can't clap twice, that kind of thing. But so these are real questions for the administrators, because my understanding is this institute is to really train leaders to become better leaders. And so I'm going to do what I do at the school when I talk to either teachers or my students. If you volunteer to answer the first question, you're off the hook. And if not, I'll ask you to answer. And I prefer that nobody answers more than once, because there are there are more than 5 people here with us. So if anybody would like to volunteer, who is in charge of doing strategic planning at your school? And I don't know is a valid answer.
This is Farah, and I can go.
How are you?
Or maybe second, whoever, if anybody's
No, please go first, please.
Okay, so who's in charge of doing the strategic planning at my school? I think it's me, but it's a collaborative effort. So what I do is we have a school action plan that I have put together, and then we discuss it in our board meetings.
Hold on, that's one question. So you're in charge of doing it, and you're the head of school.
Correct.
Okay, so somebody else, how often is it done? Sister Nagin, I'm going to ask you if you know how often a strategic plan is done. And again, I don't know is a valid answer, if that's the answer.
I think it's every 5 years. Well,
okay,
I know
that's a good answer. It's usually required every 5 years for accreditation purposes, and we like to do it at least that often to maintain the standards of accreditation. So the next question is the one that you were struggling to answer, but that Sister Aisha will answer for you. How often is it visited to check if the school is on track with regards to implementation and goal achievement? Sister Aisha.
Well, yeah, we discussed it a lot, but it's mostly the principal, me and my admin team.
Okay.
And we just update the board.
So how often is that done?
I try to do it every trimester. Well, because in accreditation we have a school improvement plan.
Okay.
So we try to coordinate that.
Okay.
But it's very much principal led.
It's very much principal what? I'm sorry.
Principal led.
Very much principal led.
Okay, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So Sister Asma and Sayyid, have you seen your school's most recent strategic plan?
Assalamu alaikum. I apologize. I can't put my camera on.
Not a problem.
So we haven't we haven't gone through accreditation. So if by strategic planning, you mean accreditation, I haven't.
No. Strategic planning is separate, but accreditation
Okay.
requires it. So,
Okay, so this is our 4th year, and every year we reevaluate, we do some strategic planning, I believe. So the most recent was in August when we got our new building.
okay, alhamdulillah. And let me see who else is with us today.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is
Alaikum assalam.
Sophia.
How are you, Sister Sufia?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thought I'd pop in for a little bit, inshallah.
So the rest of us are part of CISNA. So Sister Nagin, what is your role in the process of strategic planning? I mean, you're here today for a reason. What is your role in the process?
When my school did undergo this process, I was asked to do the secretarial meeting minutes.
Okay.
So that was my role. Now I'm in a leadership role at the school. So I might do the same thing, and I might have a different, a little bit of a different perspective, perhaps this time around.
So what is your position in the school?
I'm assistant principal.
Assistant principal. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And last time you were just in charge of taking notes.
Yes. Last time I was just teacher. So, but they asked me to, I do a lot of publications for the school. I do a lot of editing and stuff like that. So, they asked me as their resident, I guess English expert.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Everybody has a role to play. So
yes.
I'm going to say that half the people here know as much as I do or much more. And just a few, inshallah, we can learn from today's process, but inshallah, all of us can share. So there are a lot of different ways to do everything. And as we go through the presentation, if you have a way that was easier or you found work better for your school, please share it. And then the rest of us, inshallah, will benefit, because it is an ongoing process. It's not something that should take place once and be put on a shelf or now in a drive on your computer. It should be something that we visit regularly. So I'm going to skip that one. And just go through this quickly, because I think, again, a lot of you have the basis, and then we'll go through some exercises and see how we can actually put together a plan. So organizational management activity, and it is the whole organization. It should never be, I know it's principal led usually, or one of the board members will lead it, but it should be something that is has involvement of everybody. And it is an activity, which means it takes work. It's not something that happens passively. The number one goal, of course, is to set priorities, to know what do we want to get out of this process. It helps focus our energy and resources. It helps strengthen the operations of the school. It helps ensure that employees and other stakeholders are working towards common goals. And one of the big things that is lacking in a lot of schools is that if it's led only by administrators or only by board members, not everybody in the whole school is aware of everything in the plan. And it really should be something where all stakeholders are involved and everybody knows what's in there to ensure that we're all walking in the same direction, inshallah. It helps establish agreement around intended outcomes and results. And the final one is what a lot of schools also are lacking in, is it helps to assess and adjust the organization's direction. So a lot of times it's just something that we do for accreditation, or we do because we know we have to do it, but it's not always used as an assessment tool of where are we really, and it's not always used to actually set the direction for the school. So schools that do it well, if you're tracking it every 6 months, every year, you'll find that within the first 2 or 3 years, you've met most of your objectives. It really doesn't take 5 years to meet those goals. For the schools who don't do that, they will get to year 4, pull it out, look at it and realize, oh my gosh, we have not achieved a lot of these goals. We don't even remember what the goals were. Okay, so it is a process that everybody needs to be on board with. It is a disciplined effort, which means, of course, it has to have a very clear process and produces fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what our organization is, who we serve, what we do, and why we do it. And as an English teacher, that's probably how you give out all your assignments, right? Answer all those questions before doing the assignment. And it's really interesting because Even though these things seem very basic and like everybody, of course, agrees on them, when you start asking questions of people in your organization, in your school, you'll find that there's not a clear understanding in everybody's mind. So when you say who it serves, some people might say the community. Some people might say the school. Some people might say the staff. Depending on what angle they're looking at, they might have a different opinion. What it does, what does our school do? Sometimes it's hard to answer that question unless we have these conversations. And of course, the most important one is why we do it. And being a school and educating children is not a good enough why. Everybody knows that's what a school does. But why do we do it? Why is our school different from other schools? What differentiates us? What makes us the school that we are? And then always a focus on the future. We're not looking at solving problems for today. Today is going to pass very quickly. I tell teachers, whatever I'm doing right now is actually for next year and the following year. We can't work for today. We have to focus on the future. So effective strategic planning articulates not only where an organization is going and the actions needed to make progress, but how it will know if it is successful. And that's that assessment piece. And that's something that a lot of schools have difficulty with. So this is, of course, my opinion and opinion of many people of what a successful strategic plan is. Other people may have a different way of doing it and assessing success. But for us, we found the easiest way to put it together and to track it is first we have to identify our goals. And then we have to put into place a very clear time frame. And I will tell you, I had an administrator working with me months. And the biggest thing he hated about me was that I set deadlines. He's like, why do you always tell us when it has to be done? Well, if there's not a time frame, things become very fluid and they never get done. And then who's responsible? It has to be clearly identified on the document or everybody will pass the buck. Oh, it wasn't me. Oh, was it me? Or I thought it was somebody else. And it doesn't get taken care of. The specific steps that have to be taken, the resources that are needed. And in most of all of our plans, time and money are going to be resources that are needed. And then you might have additional resources, but those are two of the basic ones. How are we going to evaluate our success? Because we know as educators, if you can't measure it, then you can't say you did it. It's not enough to just say, oh, well, everything looks good. Well, I think I did it. We really have to have a means of evaluation and how we tabulate and record that evaluation. And then as we go through it, we update it. It's a living document. It should not be something, again, static that's put on a shelf or stuck in a file on your shared drive, but it's something that we should be going through regularly. So setting up a committee is important. It should not be one person. I've been to many schools where the principal does the whole thing. And then you come and talk to everybody in the school and they have no idea. They say, we know she did it. We know there's a document, but we're not really sure how it happened. So on the strategic planning committees that I've served on or that I've led, I always, for one, my board is automatically, every board member is automatically a member of the strategic planning committee because the board's job is to set the strategic plan for the school. They are responsible for putting that into place. All the administrators are automatically members of the committee. And then we choose, we ask people to volunteer from our faculty, our staff, our parents, our students, our alumni, our donors, and our community members, because each one of them has a view of what we're doing and has an idea of what they think we should be doing. And in order to move forward in the best way possible, we all need to be on the same page. So it is a bigger group of people, and people have told me you can't have a successful process with so many people in it. But for me, that's the only way that it's truly successful. Our planning committees are normally about 17 members. Now, not all of them attend every meeting, not all of them are as active as the others, but they do have to be a part of the process. During that process, there have to be regular meetings scheduled. It's not a half hour, once a month kind of job. To get it done, it's a few hours a week for a couple of months to get it done. And it really does take an investment. And we try and make sure that people know before you volunteer to be on the strategic planning committee, you know what it's going to take. Because it's not an easy process, but once it's there, it makes running your organization so much better. And I debated back and forth about this third point because it really should be the first point, but it can't be the first point because you have to have a committee first. So reviewing the vision and mission of the school. without a clear vision and mission, nothing we do makes any sense. On boards of schools where you have issues come up, and I know we have Brother Ahmed is a board member, was the chairman of the board. I've sat on many boards in the last 30 years, but the biggest reason boards fall apart or are not effective or destroy the school are because there's not a clear vision and mission that everybody agrees on. And so for me, that should be, again, number one, but we can't make it number one until we have that committee. So this is something that, yes, Brother Ahmed.
I just want to make a quick comment on the previous slide.
Yes,
I think the vision and mission is very critical for all stakeholders. I think the board certainly will need to embrace it and make sure that they set that direction. And the other comment I want to make on the committee members that you have listed, which is exactly what we have done in our school, but the tip point that I could give to other administrators is when you send your introductory email or your invitation for anyone to serve on the committee, make sure that you delineate the expectations. And once you have that expectation, they know what time they're going to commit, what type of energy they need to put toward that, then it makes it easier.
yes. And also when they know the importance of the outcome and how much it's going to strengthen their school. We actually have a PowerPoint that we send out to everybody before we ask them to volunteer. And it goes through the whole process, why we need it, what we're going to be doing at the meetings, what we expect everybody to contribute. So the people who volunteer are the ones who will put that work in. You're not going to find somebody volunteering who does not want to meet on because usually on the weekend or evening when we can meet. And usually your biggest complainers in the school, the ones who say nothing is going right, we don't like the way you do something, they're not the ones who volunteer. And at the end of the process, at another school, I had a parent who was always yelling at me. And I said, you know what, brother? I sent you the invitation. You know when we were meeting, you knew where we were meeting. We were providing food at every meeting. You didn't attend a single meeting. You have given up your right to complain, because if you wanted to give something, you had the opportunity and you didn't do it. So it's a really a good process, and we shouldn't try and exclude people because they're complainers, because through the process, they can become some of our best supporters. Sister Sufia, you had your hand up.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Magda. Sorry to interrupt.
No, not a problem
mashallah, you're doing a wonderful job. I just wanted to comment, and I know you stressed already the importance of vision and mission review. And you had mentioned that you might put that first, but I'm not sure why you didn't. But I just wanted to state that
because we can't review it until we have a committee to review it.
So here are my thoughts on it.
Okay.
Reviewing the vision and mission should come first, and it shouldn't be a committee. I would say, and vision mission wouldn't be reviewed for, average 5 year span, every 5 years. But when the vision mission is reviewed, I would invite just first do surveys of everyone, your community members, all stakeholders.
So give me a minute, Sylvia, because we're going to get to that.
Okay, no, I'm just saying for it to come first, because without a mission vision review, that's what really guides the strategic planning process. Because once you know what your goal is, then you can work on, all right, what's our plan on how to get there?
And again, there are probably 10 ways to get from point A to point B any time of the day with anything we do. And I teach math, and that's what I tell my students. And so part of our process at our school is we have the committee, we tell them about everything. Then the mission and vision goes out to the whole school through surveys, and everybody has input on it. This is a thing that is often a problem with schools and any organization, actually, not just schools. And about, I think 12 years ago, I brought in somebody from outside. He was from a college of engineering, and to talk to us, because he had gone to our website. He was actually thinking to have his kids join the school, and he'd gone to the website. And he said, your vision is not a vision. Your vision is a mission. And it took me, sometimes I'm fast and sometimes I'm slower. It took about an hour and a half of asking him questions and having him guide me through the process to be able to really see the difference between a vision and a mission. And he kept telling me, just close your eyes, and what do you see 30 years from now from a student who's left your school? And what you see at that 30-year forward point That's your vision. And of course you should think, CC and vision, they're the same words. That's easy to, but it took me a long time to get it. And we kept coming up with statements. He's like, nope, that's still a mission statement. So it really is, what do you see as the ultimate product of your school? And then the mission is going to provide an overview of your plans to realize that vision. So now every time we start meetings with our staff, our board, we talk about focusing on the vision and being guided by our mission. So it's really keeping in mind, what are you looking for? When we're old and retired, so we're not old yet, right, Sue? We're not quite there. But when we become old and we look back at everything we've done, and we look at what have we produced, what has come out of these schools, that's our vision. And what do we want that to be? We have to set it now. So our school, where I am now, this is our 7th year. And when we first opened, it was me and 2 board members, and we just put together our vision. And then 2 years ago, when we went through that revision process, and it went to all the stakeholders, and we realized, the general meeting was okay, but it really wasn't what we wanted. And so we put together, took us about 2 months of back and forth with all the stakeholders of putting together a new vision statement and then putting together the mission statement. And the word mission statement can be a misnomer because ours is 2 paragraphs long. And I don't tell people they have to memorize it, but we do have to know what's in it. And so I'm going to show you ours just as an example.
Can I digress for just a second to have you address the concept of mission drift that everybody has to be cautious of?
Yes. I thought you were going to talk about it. So yes, so over time, and what we found is usually between years 7 and 10, a lot of schools tend to lose their vision and they forget what they originally started for. And then the mission does begin to change. It does drift, and we have to go back. And I think I published something a few years ago about, for our eyes, we go for our annual check to make sure our vision is still good. And if it's not, we correct it. And I think we have to do the same thing with our schools and our organizations. We have to really check and make sure our vision and mission are staying where they need to be and they haven't drifted from our original plans. Is that what you meant, Sue?
Yep.
Good. Okay. And usually 10 years, a lot of schools have to go back and really check and make sure they're still on track for there. And I think that's why by year 11, I left 2 different schools because the schools had drifted so far off from where they were when I had joined them that I could no longer support the new vision and mission as the head administrator. And so it's really important to have that teamwork and the board members and administrators working together with the other stakeholders to make sure we stay on track. So this is just something we did when we went into Zoom mode 2 years ago.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, please.
So at the previous schools that you mentioned, you felt that you no longer can serve the new mission. I mean, was it because of the change of stakeholders? What created that shift? What created that change?
The board members' focus changed and it became more driven on a business model and less on education. And they were willing to sacrifice some of our core values. And I'll actually tell you 2 statements that led me to leave my keys on the conference table and walk out. And I didn't walk out. I'm really good about, I made sure all my files in order, the computer, everything was fine. Everybody who came after me, I made them stay so that the school didn't collapse. My goal was not to hurt the school, but as the head of school, I didn't feel I could support it anymore. So one of the board members came to me one day and said, "What is your obsession with achieving excellence?" And I'm like, I don't know. That's kind of the first statement in our mission statement. It says our school is, we achieve academic excellence. And if excellence is no longer a part of the mission, I'm not sure. He said, go a little bit easy. Let's try for average. And I'm like, average was never in my vocabulary as a goal. And then about a year later, we were at a meeting and something came up about how dare you question the board about something that's not in your job description. Well, it was in my job description, but I said, regardless, Islamically, if we see something that's not happening right, it's my job to advise that we go back to what's right. And he said, sister, let's put Islam to the side. And I said, you know what, if Islam's on the side and there's no excellence, I really have no job here. I signed up for a certain job and there was a certain mission and a vision that we had. And I can't preach mediocrity and I can't say take Islam out of the equation. So that's when I told them, today's my last day. And I went in, and in 3 hours, I was able to do what I thought would take 3 weeks. Everything was in order, and I left. And we had told our staff 3 months earlier that our administration might be leaving, and actually 4 of the administrators left at one time at the end of the school year because it didn't fit everything that we were trying to do for the previous 11 years. So at a certain point, administrators do have to make that decision, and it was 2 years of trying to mediate with the board, and we actually brought in an outside mediator, and the outside mediator was told, it was terrible. He was told the worst thing Islamic school educators do is they use Quran and Sunnah to support what they're doing. And that was like, okay, we're really, this is time to go. So it happens. And subhanAllah, those board members are no longer at that school. A new group came in, and alhamdulillah, they got back on track. But I had already started this new school. And alhamdulillah, our community is so large that if we had 7 more schools, they would all be full. When we went into Zoom mode, we created these laptop stickers, and they're actually only 4 inches by 3 inches. And we had every student, staff member, and parent put them onto their laptops so that every day when we started our day on Zoom, we could remember what our vision and mission statements were. And then in the torch, because that's part of our vision to create torchbearers of the future, we have our core values. And these were things that after 2 months of discussion with all the stakeholders, we decided these core values were things that they're non-negotiable. If any of these things are lost, the school is lost. And of course, Islam, Iman, and Ihsan were at the top, and compassion came after that. And subhanAllah, we make all of our decisions whenever things are a little tense. We have to remind each other, we have to have that compassion when we make our decisions. We chose accountability very intentionally. We looked at other organizations, authority figures in Islam, in our communities, in the world. What is the biggest thing that we've lost? And it's accountability. For some reason, people think the higher they are in hierarchy, the less accountable they are. We wanted to remind our teachers, our administrators, and our board members that the higher you go in authority, the more accountable you are. And then respect. And that ties into our mission statement, where everyone at Bayan Academy is valued and respected. And we try to bring everything back to that in our meetings, in our conversations with students. It's been 2 years since we put this into place, and in another few years, we may tweak it a little bit, it may change. But a lot of people thought it was too long. But we thought, you know what, it's okay if it's long as it's what we're really trying to do. And it's things that we can all remember, even if we don't rote memorize it. We can't just, I can't spit this out in paragraph form, but I can tell you that we are trying to create a God-conscious culture where everyone is valued and respected. And when people walk into our door, they know that that's what's happening. They can feel it when they walk in. So it's just something that really represents everything you do. And when you go into the strategic planning process, if these concepts aren't really clear, you won't be able to move forward successfully with the process. So we survey all stakeholders, and with students, we start from 3rd grade. With parents, we do from pre-K and up. We do all of our teachers, administrators, board members, alumni. We did not survey our donors, I don't think, the last time we did it. And then you review the results of the surveys, you do a SWOT analysis, and you define the areas to include in the strategic plan. And these are the areas that you want to improve, work on, or develop. So when you do the surveys, yes, Brother Ahmed.
Can you comment on how far you need to be inclusive of people who do not return the survey? Let's say the survey is only one tool.
Returns the surveys.
Sorry?
Everybody returns our surveys.
Oh,
I'm going to tell you how we do it. So I'll go back 20 years when it was all paper, and I used to collect about 1,500 surveys to go through. And if they didn't fill them out, so all the students do them in class. So we know they're going to do them. There's no way they can't do them. We give them a 20-minute introduction, what it's for, why we do it, what we're going to do with your answers, and we make them feel very empowered. My students, and I remember this was years ago, we had a third grader who, so we have a lot of it is 1 to 5, you rate it, and then there's a lot of open-ended questions. So
Yeah,
one
I'm
of the
talking about the parents and the
No,
community
no,
members.
So the students, well, because we proved to them. So one of the students said, I hate going to the bathroom at school to fix my hijab because the mirrors are too high. I had our maintenance guy come on the weekend and he lowered those mirrors 6 inches so that everybody could see themselves in mirrors. So we tell them what you tell us is going to be accurate. The parents, we send the online link. When they don't respond online, I print copies and we're at the dismissal line and drop off lines. And I go, Salaam alaikum, how are you? I have this clipboard. I have 10 questions for you to answer. And they will go through them because they know that what they say is going to make a difference. They know that it's not just I'm collecting paper, because when they make a suggestion, we actually implement it if it is going to make the school better. So we had a parent, she was so frustrated. COVID started and we don't have air purifiers in the school. And what are we going to do? I'm like, okay, I'll set up a link right now. We can order air purifiers, but I don't have the money to buy them. In 24 hours, we collected enough money for 8 air purifiers. And by Monday, they were all in classrooms. Amazon's amazing. They delivered 24 hours and everything was there. So they know that when they say something and it's important and it's going to make the school better, they will see that in the school. They ask, why do we have water fountains? And you guys say everybody has to have refillable water bottles. Again, we sent out a link. We ordered 4 water refilling stations. We put locks on all of our water fountains so nobody can push the button anymore. And everybody puts their bottle and refills the water. And if they don't have one from home, we provide them and we invoice them $5 for a Bayan Academy water bottle. So they know that when they say something, we're going to do what has to be done. We might charge them for it because we don't have unlimited funds, but I don't rely on the online results. I will stand in the drop off and pickup line, and parents have a really hard time saying no to me. So, you know, smile, give them a chocolate, bring flowers. We do all kinds of stuff, all kinds of incentives to make our parents, to help them give us what we need to make their kids' school a better school. And when you put it in that, if you put it in that framework, that it's your children's school, and we want to give your children the best school possible, they are much more likely to respond. And any way it takes. And I value every single response. When I was at American Youth Academy, I think from the pre-K parents, we had 47 kids in pre-K. All of the responses were extremely positive except one. And so I was like, oh, good, we just got one bad response. We don't even have to look at that. And anyway, she took her child out. That's the only one I looked at.
So do you see any value on town hall meetings?
Oh, we do town hall meetings all the time.
No, for strategic planning purposes.
Oh, of course. We do them
Okay.
all the time. And we get input and we share the input with, because not everybody comes to the town hall. So once the input comes, so the air purifiers came from town hall meetings that we do them. We used to do them in person. Now we do them on Zoom. And they're kind of annoying for administrators because they have to be at night. And so we do them usually on a Wednesday at 8 p.m. But that's when we get the most parent response. They put their little bitty kids to sleep. Everybody's home from work. They've had dinner. They prayed Maghrib. And so if it works for them, that's when we do those meetings. But we do, I'd say 2 or 3 town hall meetings per semester just on a regular basis, just to make sure that we have the pulse of the parents. And what I found from my tons of years in education is that when people get really upset and frustrated with the school, it's because we got too busy to communicate with them. And that's what I'm out on the dismissal line, making sure I'm shaking hands. How are you? How are things going at home? And then everybody's happy again. And it's really communication is key in this process. So when you develop the surveys, it's really important to know what kind of survey to use. And you have to look at, will you be developing the questions internally, or will you be using surveys provided by accrediting agencies? And Cognia, if you're with Cognia, I'm not sure about all the other agencies, on their portal, you can just click and they have all kinds of surveys. They don't always include all the kinds of questions we want for our Islamic schools, because we want to ask about spiritual development. We want to ask about how much is the Quran impacting your child's life. So we may do a combination of both. And that's where it be modified. And so our surveys, I think we had 13 different surveys. Overall, they were the same, but then for the different stakeholder groups, they were different. So for pre-K and kindergarten parents, it was different than 1st to 4th grade parents. For 5th to 8th, it was different. For high school, it was different. And then we need to look at, will they be administered individually or in groups? So we did a PTO meeting, it was a kind of a town hall, and we had laptops available for everybody. They used their phones. We did the survey, that we got a good group then. The board members had to do it in a board meeting. The teachers did it in the staff meetings. I mean, we try and do it in groups, but then when we miss them, we send out the WhatsApp, reminders and a link. And then we catch them outside with a paper copy. And then you want to see are your stakeholders not able to read English well enough to where you need to make accommodations, either in Urdu, in Arabic, in Spanish, whatever language you have there. At our current school, everybody is fine with English. When I was at my previous school, we used to translate a lot of things to Arabic or have a parent come in and we would read the questions to them to make sure that they weren't just, checking 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 on everything and giving us response. I didn't put it here, but timing is really important. We never do surveys, whether it's teacher survey, administrator survey, strategic planning survey. We never do surveys before a report card comes out. There is this underlying fear that if I say something not good, it's going to impact my child's grades. It does not, but people believe that. So we always wait till, okay, now you got your report cards, all your kids got honor roll, can you answer the survey? So they know there's no, and for teachers, by the way, when we do they do administrative surveys every year. They evaluate the administrators. We don't ask them to do the survey until they've received their job offers, so that they're not afraid that they can't be honest. We give them their job offers first, then we do the administrator surveys to make sure that there's no fear involved there. And then the most important part is how you analyze and understand those survey results and use them for what you want. And so we always will decide on benchmarks. Anything above this percentage, we're not going to look at. Below, that like if everybody has a positive rating of 80% or higher, that's not going to be part of our strategic plan. That's going to be something we celebrate. Anything below 80%, we're going to look at. Anything below 40%, that's going to become our priority because that's where we have the most disapproval. And then we do a SWOT analysis. And I don't know if anybody here has not done one, if you have a question about them, but this by itself takes a few hours. You have all the results of your surveys, you've shared it with everybody. And then you look at what are the most amazing things we do, and please celebrate them. Don't just put them on a notepad and stick it in a drawer. That's what you have to celebrate and make sure everybody knows that you're very proud of them. What are the weaknesses? And we have to be very honest, brutally honest. And if it's me, it's me. I got to talk about, we have a problem with the head of school locking herself out of her office the day she has a presentation to do. I mean, but we all have weaknesses and we have to work on them. And then the opportunities. Where are there opportunities for us to grow and improve? And when we look at opportunities, we look at what's in our community, who are the resources that we have, what are potential fundraising resources, what are other schools doing that we could learn from and grow based on what they're doing. And then we look at our threats, internal and external. And that's something hard for a lot of people to talk about. They didn't want to think about it. And in every strategic planning survey we've done, our largest external threat was our community, the Muslim community. They have been the biggest threat to any Islamic school success. They will beat you down and talk about you because they have to make themselves feel better that their kids aren't at your school. Okay, so that's part of it. But there are other threats. Maybe a new school is opening up down the street and they're going to take your kids. Maybe there's a new magnet program opening up. When I was at one of our schools, the threat for us was losing our best kids to IB programs. And so part of our strategic plan was to implement an IB program. And 4 years later, we have an IB diploma program at the school. And our kids, I think every student who's gone through it has gotten the diploma, which is really good. And so now those kids, they don't have to say, I need to go to a public school to get the IB program. I can get my IB diploma through the Islamic school. So it's really important to have those conversations and to really understand what are the things that might keep us from growing and improving. And it might be internal low morale among staff. It might be you have a staff member who teaches amazingly well, has amazing credentials, but they're always gossiping. Gossip is a cancer. And if you let that teacher stay on staff, I don't care how good they are, they will destroy your school. So it's really important to analyze what are those internal threats and what are the external threats. And then you look at what are the things in our school that might need to be improved, right? And these are things you would include on your survey. You want to make sure that you get input about what everybody thinks about these programs. Of course, curriculum, that's education. That's what we do. And how do we know we did it? We test. And technology, we can't get away from anymore. Things that we thought we would never buy, now every school and every classroom has it. Faculty and staff, you want to look at numbers, you want to look at quality, you want to look at morale, and you want to look at benefits. What are you paying your staff? Your student population. 3 years ago, we did a survey of our students. We had students from 26 different ethnic backgrounds, all different colors of the rainbow, and we thought we were really diverse. So I met a teacher who I've known for over 30 years in Tampa, and she's African-American. And she said, but do you have any Black kids? I said, sure, we have 6 families from the Sudan. I mean, I was really prepared with my answer. She said, that's not what I mean. That's not diversity. I mean African-American from this country. And I said, you know what? I don't. And we made it part of our strategic plan to go into those communities and teach them about the school and tell them that we had a great opportunity for their kids. Now we have 2 families who are African-American. One of them, their father is one on our board now. So, you know, really looking deep at what do we have and trying to make sure that we say we represent all Muslims who want to be here, that we've actually made it easy for all Muslims who want to be here to actually be here. You look at governance. Governance is hard. And I know Brother Ahmed's here, but governance is hard. Working with, not all board members are the same. Not all boards are the same. But governance is a really important part to look at. And a lot of schools do not do self-assessment of board members. The board members do not self-assess their performance. And that's really important. So that part really needs to be looked at. Facilities, you know, do our facilities meet our needs? Are they safe? Are they secure? Are the classrooms wide enough? How's the ventilation? A lot of things now we didn't even look at before COVID. And then a college prep plan if you have high school students. If I'm telling kids that I have a really good high school, am I guaranteeing that I can get them into medical school, engineering school, accounting, law, anything they want to go into? Do I have the courses in place and the advising in place to make sure that any student who wants to choose any field, I'm going to help them get there? And if I don't, then I don't have a really good college prep plan. So it's really important when we give labels to what we offer, that we can really offer that program. And if you say you have special needs programs, that's a totally different ballgame. Very few of our schools have special needs programs.
I have 2 questions, if I could interject. One of
Please.
them is rather personal. So I've
Okay.
noticed in you and some other terrific leaders, this unbounded energy, this exuberance and energy. So I want to tap into your secret for success and how do you have such energy? And the second question is actually kind of related. In some schools, I have seen a sense of apathy. And
Yes.
so what do you do when you feel that the school has a problem with its apathy?
So I'll talk about energy first, because that seems to be a really burning question in a lot of people's minds. I don't drink coffee. I can't drink coffee because they'll ask me, what kind of coffee do you drink? We want that brand. Actually, I've done several experiments on myself, and the less caffeine you drink, actually, the more energy you have. As long as you drink water in place of that caffeine, your cells actually perform better when you have a lot of water. The only reason I drink caffeine, because my last experiment, I cut out caffeine completely for a month and I was doing amazingly well, but I wasn't sleeping and my muscles got tired. I couldn't sleep more than 4 or 5 hours a night, and I was hyped the whole time from not drinking caffeine. And so I went back to drinking caffeine so I could sleep at night. So sleeping is important, by the way. People tell me, you must not sleep, you do so much. I sleep a solid 6 to 8 hours every single night, alhamdulillah. And what helps is administrators and board members and parents and whatever we are, we have all these burning things in our head that we're trying to figure out and solve. And that keeps us up at night. So I usually get up, I get a pad of paper and a pencil or a pen, I write down everything in my head. And once it's out of my head, I go back to sleep and I take care of it in the morning. So I just put it off till the next day because sleep is really important. And I think a lot of our administrators don't get enough sleep. Power naps, I learned about 25 years ago at my first school. I would close the door to my office, close the blinds, put the prayer rug on the floor, and I would just take a 15-minute nap. And then I'd get up and I was refreshed for about 3 hours. But yes, it does take a lot of energy. I also believe very firmly that when you shake hands with a child, you absorb their energy. And so I'm always shaking hands with kids. I used to with my kids at home all the time. I'm like, I am so tired. I need your energy, and just grasp their hand and really a tight grip for about 20, 30 seconds. You do get that energy. It's physiologically proven. So schools where they don't touch kids or there's no physical contact, they're really suffering. You know, shake their hands. It makes them feel good. And when you tell them, I need your energy, it really makes them feel like they gave you something. So alhamdulillah, it's oh, I want to go back to this. So these are a lot of the topics we look at. And my discussion with Brother Ahmed, I think a couple of days ago, we were looking at, he was mentioning about the domains, and it brought to mind that in accreditation, the accrediting boards put things into domains. And so you can take those topics and see which domain that's going to fit into. And you can either put the entire domain as part of your strategic plan, and then maybe look at smaller things under it, or you can pick a smaller one under it to work on. But you really need to keep in mind which domain it's going to fit under when you're going through your accreditation process. So every accrediting board has different domains. And if you haven't gone through accreditation, I will tell you that you can start accreditation today, and next year, that same accreditation board will have a different set of domains. I have been with Advanced Ed and Cognia since 2009, 2 different schools. I have never seen an organization change their standards so many times. And it gets to the point where I've had evaluators who didn't know the standards had changed. And I had to tell them that, no, these are the new standards that we're going to be evaluated by. So, you know, be always aware of what your accrediting board is looking at, and kind of have your strategic plan aligned so you don't have to do the same job twice. You need to keep those 2 things in mind at the same time. So this is something I learned when I did my first accreditation back in 97, or maybe my second one, I can't remember, but I attended a workshop in Miami, and the school that did it, they talked about the balanced scorecard method. And it is a method. It's very clear cut, very easy to follow the steps. And that's what I need to get my work done. And so that's what I've used in our last 5 accreditations, and it's worked for me. If you have a different way that also works, there's the driver's method. And I think I have a YouTube link at the bottom that kind of connects to that. But for me, this is how my brain functions. You have your action steps, time frame, who's responsible, what are they going to do, what are they going to need, and how am I going to determine if it worked? And it's just, for me, it's like a checklist. You go through it. It's a process. You put it together, and then it's much easier to follow and gauge how well you did in your strategic planning process. We're not going to have time to go through this actually, because I have 4 minutes, and then Brother Ahmed's going to start. But this is something, Sister Sue, you can share this with whoever is here who would like it. I just went through a sample, and there's just some, ways that you can go through and do a test for your own school. And if you can go back to the chat and let me know what is the most important thing you learned. Let me see if I can put it back here.
Do you want this on Menti or in the chat?
No, on Menti. I'm going to share it with everybody again, because whoever joined late won't have it. So there's the link. It's nice to see what's the most important thing you learned from today's presentation. And I hope you learned at least one thing. That's our goal. I attend workshops on the same topics over and over, and I always learn at least one new thing. So I'm hoping that, and if the thing stays blank for a couple more seconds, I'm going to move it, because I don't handle rejection very well. But if you learned anything, what is it?
I have a quick question. When you send these surveys out to stakeholders, are you surveying the entire strategic plan all at once, or are you looking at
no, this is before we even start the strategic plan. We look at every aspect of the school, and we ask for how happy they are with those parts of the school. And then we have open-ended questions. What are the best 3 things about Bayan Academy? And if you could make any changes, what would they be? And that's what we analyze. That's what we use to put together the strategic plan. We don't start the planning process until we get the results back.
Right, but my question, I guess, was, are you asking in one survey for
about
all
everything
of the above, or are you doing it in okay?
So there's I think our surveys are an average of 37 rate on a scale of 1 to 5 question. And then there's the 2 open-ended at the bottom where they can write whatever they want.
Okay, and then the second question, are you and the board, so this is before the strategic planning, are you and the board then reviewing the results and then based on that putting a committee together or asking for people to join?
No, so we have the committee first and we tell them about the whole process. Then we do the surveys, because even the surveys, the committee has input on some of the questions. They're like our test sample, right? Is the question clear? Would you know how to answer it if it came to you? Are there any other questions we should add? So we had a lot of educators who were parents on the committee, and they actually gave us some really good feedback about how to tweak some of the questions to make them more clear. Because when I make a question, I know what I'm asking, but it may not be clear to the person reading it. So we got their feedback on that. And then from the committee, we had a subcommittee that was in charge of tabulating all the results and sharing it with the full committee. And once the full committee went through it, we shared it with everybody. We told them this is what we found. And this is what we're going to work on based on what we found. So there's no secrets. Everything is very transparent, very clear, and shared with everybody. Sister Farah, you had your hand up.
Yes, assalamu alaikum, alhamdulillah. So I just wanted to make a comment. First of all, thank you for your energy and for the wonderful presentation. I did pick up a lot of good information and suggestions that I've made a note of, inshallah ta'ala. I just wanted to make a comment about aligning your school mission action plan or strategic plan with standards. And what at our school, what we've done is we've taken our mission statement and we've extracted the visions from it and we've aligned our school action plan to it. And I'll give you an example. So of course, all our mission statements, we have pretty much the same themes in our mission statements. And one of the theme in our mission statement is safe school environment.
Yes.
And for say it's a safe school environment, that we have established action steps and we have it in table form. What's the objective, what are the action steps, who is the owner, the resources used, evaluation measures, and what have you. So it has it is aligned to a mission statement. It just gives us that satisfaction that we are working on. We are still using our mission statement to move forward. And I loved your comment about looking at your survey results and recognizing your strengths and celebrations. And I think it scores above 80%, and the rest of the items as the goals. But for a school action plan purposes, I would still put my strengths there so that I don't lose that focus. And I continue that same best practices, inshallah. So just wanted to share a few things. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. The only thing I found is that if you put too many things in the plan, it's really hard to focus on what has to be done. So it's good to mention all of those things. These are our strengths. We will continue to work on them and continuing to keep them as our strengths. However, these 5, 10, 11 items are the ones that we're really going to put our energy into. And then as you finish those, you can add new ones. I mean, you might start with the first 5, then I'm going to go with the next 5. You prioritize them by importance and how much we need them, and then we go to the next one. Alhamdulillah, I'm glad everybody responded more to this one. Alhamdulillah. And if I can help afterwards, I did share my information in the last slide. So can go next.
Very didactic and much appreciated, Sister Magda. Thank you so much.
There's one
next. Oh, okay.
But you know what? I'm not going to do it because we need to finish. But this is the last slide. That's my contact information. These are some video. They're really short video resources. The reason I chose short, it's because if you're starting the process, you want to share them with your committee. It's something that you can show one at the beginning of each meeting. They're ones you can share with them in an introductory email before they come to the meeting. And if you Google strategic planning, there are hundreds of videos. Please make sure you watch them. Some of them will put you to sleep. Some of them are in a very strange accent that nobody can understand. So just make sure that whatever you share is going to help bring people closer to the goal of the strategic planning and not scare them away from joining. And Jazakumullah khair. And I apologize, Brother Ahmed, for taking from your time.
Thank you so much. And the deck will be shared with you, inshallah, when I send the replay link for everyone. So thank you. Will you stay with us, Sister Magda, or do you have to go?
No, I will be here. I have a lot to learn from Brother Ahmed, inshallah.
Indeed. And to that, I'm so grateful for you joining us, Brother Ahmed Abuabdou. So that honestly, this is something that we have difficulty, I think, in getting participation from board members. And especially every school always has issues with the money. So your insights to this will be truly treasured. So take it away. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Sister Susan. Thank you, Sister Majda, for the very informative presentation that you gave earlier. So I was approached by Principal Ziad, who we work very closely with, and I'm glad actually we have, I believe, Sister Nagin also on, Ms. Nagin on the call, to provide some helpful tips to school principals and administrators on the accounting and finance side of things. And this is critical when we're talking about strategic planning. You're talking about your mission. If in order for you to execute that mission and get the vision that you need to have in 20, 30 years, you will need a margin. You will need some form of money to actually make that happen. Now, obviously, you know, tawakkul ala Allah is required. Our faith and belief is required. Energy is required. Teamwork is required. But eventually, money will be also required in order to get into that mission. So, a little bit of background about myself. I'm a physician by profession. And I have a Master of Business Administration that, alhamdulillah, helped me get some insightful knowledge about accounting and finance. I currently serve as the treasurer for the Huda Academy School Board. This is the only Muslim school in Central Arkansas, based off Little Rock, and I was the immediate past chairman for the school board as well. So I understand the challenges, and I understand the dynamic relationship that each one of us had with the principal, back and forth with the board. And I'm hopeful that with great minds like yours and the presence of CISNA, hopefully that we find that collaborative platform between the board and the principal. The board is there to support the principal. Run the day-to-day operation of the school. The day-to-day operation of the school is not the board's responsibility. We are there for governance. We are there for setting up policies. We are there to provide resources, marshal resources, so we can get the school to where it needs to be. All right, here is the agenda. We're going to go over some common accounting vocabulary. And again, if you're familiar with it, if you feel it's primitive information, please forgive me, but they are important as we go forward with financial statements. And then we'll share some budgeting tips and some best practices. And then we'll take a case example and see how would that materialize itself. So let me start by asking the audience just one common question. Do you actually have an accountant in school, or is this purely run by one of your board members? If you can just type in the chat, that will be very helpful. Ms. Farah says we have an accountant. That's a blessing from Allah, alhamdulillah, that you have an accountant on board. Alhamdulillah. Anybody else who have account? We have board members, Ms. Nagin. All right. Well, we'll keep moving forward. It's important for you to understand what accounting methodology are you using on your school. Do you actually do accrual accounting, or do you actually do cash basis accounting? Because that's very important. The way your financial statements will be dictated by which accounting methodology you're actually using. So if we go over accrual accounting, it's a financial accounting method that allows a company to record revenue before receiving payments for goods or services sold, or expenses are recorded as incurred before the company has actually paid them. So in other words, if you have a parent showing up on first day of school saying, I would like to register my child in kindergarten, you invoice them for that. The total invoice for the year, let's say hypothetically, is $6,000. So the $6,000 gets recorded as revenue on August 1st. Now, even though you have not received the money, that invoice sits in your account receivables for the entire duration or the term of the invoice. And so It's important to understand that piece, because if you're looking then at the statement of cash flows, you may not have the cash to reflect the $6,000 that you just recorded on your books. Similarly, if you have gone to a bookstore and you have asked for books to be provided to your students, they invoiced you, you received the bill from them, the bill is due or termed at 30 days or 60 days or whichever the case may be, you would record that bill on that day. Now, despite the fact that you're making a payment 60 days later, that will impact your cash flow, but in your books, those have been recorded on the day you have been billed. Does that make sense? I just want to make sure that we are clear on this concept. In cash basis accounting, this is an accounting method where payment receipts are recorded during the period in which they are received, and expenses are recorded whenever cash has been actually received and paid respectively. So you get a parent who comes in and say, you know, I would like to register my child. Here is your invoice, $6,000. He cut you a check, say, here's your $6,000. All right, you would record the invoice, you would record the payment all on the same day, and it's a done deal. So for your school, you'll just have to decide which accounting methodology you're going to follow, because that will dictate how you analyze your financial statements. In our school, we have moved from cash basis accounting 6 years ago, and we've been using accrual-based accounting. And we feel that we actually see that it's actually very helpful for us from budgeting and projection for future.
Is there any other advantage to using accrual versus cash?
It's actually very helpful if you are obligated to file for tax returns, the accrual-based accounting. So again, check with your tax consultant, whoever helps you with your tax returns, but it's actually more auditor friendly because it's very hard to audit cash. And that's why we don't even have a clear reflection of what the GDP for any country is, because you still have some element of cash that doesn't get reported, and therefore accrual-based accounting is more accurate. If you look at any publicly reported company, they all have to use accrual-based accounting. Big companies use accrual-based accounting rather than just an LLC run by one single individual. You could potentially run a cash basis accounting. But from an audit perspective, if you get an IRS showing up at the door of your school, if you have accrual-based accounting, most likely you're going to stand the audit, because there is an audit trail here that you could keep. All right, what do we mean by revenue? A revenue is a money that is generated from normal business operation. Okay, so you are in the business of education. You're offering education to children, and you would charge parents for the service that you're offering. That will be recorded as revenue, and we would recognize the revenue on income statements. All right, so revenues are not recognized on balance sheets. They are not recognized on statement of cash flows. They are rather recognized on income statement. Expenses, these are the cost of operations that a company would incur to generate the revenue. Basically, it would cost you money to bring in money, so to speak. And so if you have teachers and you have a payroll, then that's a cost of operation. All right. If you have a building and you're offering maintenance and repairs to it, that's a cost of operation. And so it will be recorded as such. So there are two different types of expenses. You've got operating expenses and non-operating expenses. Let's say, for example, you've got an employee retreat that you're trying. This is not essentially related to the operation of the school. It will be classified as a non-operating expense. All right, assets. They are resources with economic value that an individual, corporation, or country owns or controls with the expectation that it will provide future benefit. All right, it's typically reported on a balance sheet. The school building that you have is an asset. All right, and it will be reported on the balance sheet if you have balance sheets that you generate at any given time. There are two different types of assets that are reported on the balance sheet. There are current assets and there are fixed assets. Does anybody know what the difference is between current assets and fixed assets? Any takers? No? Sorry. Okay. Current assets is basically if you have any asset that could be liquidated into cash in less than 12 months, it's called current assets. All right. And so if you have cash that's sitting in a bank account, that's a liquid asset because you could easily use it for any other purpose. Your account receivables are expected to be paid in less than 12 months, and therefore they are considered current assets. Your inventory is considered a current asset. Prepaid expenses is considered a current asset. So for example, if you have bought a building insurance and you paid the premium for the entire year, that's a prepaid expense. And so it's considered a current asset because you could certainly then cancel the policy, get a refund, and that will translate into cash. So anything that could be liquidated within 12 months is considered current assets. All right. Fixed assets are your property, plant, and equipment. So your school building itself is a fixed asset. Okay. Your school furniture is fixed asset. Computers are fixed assets, things of that nature. All right. Are we clear on this? Yeah, go ahead, Sister Magda.
So that's what I always thought. When you asked any takers, that's what I was going to say, but you can liquidate those in 12 months.
Yes,
so
but
how does that definition work with that?
It works because it's not easily liquidated. That's number one. Number two, the fixed assets have a depreciation expense that are not available with current assets as well.
Yes.
Any other questions on the assets? All right, liabilities. This is when something, this is really something where a person or a company owes, usually it's in a sum of money. That's when you get into loans, for example. That's called a liability. And it's also recognized on balance sheet. Let me give you an example. In the middle of this pandemic, most of the schools have received payroll protection program from the government. Those later were forgiven. So the right way of recording it in accounting, from an accounting perspective, all right, they first initially have to be recorded as loans, which means liabilities. You've got cash that got injected to the school, whichever that cash is, 100,000, 50,000, whatever that amount is. It gets injected to the school. So you are reporting cash as an asset, but opposite to that, there is a liability, which is the loan, because it has not been forgiven yet for the exact amount. And that way your balance sheet actually gets balanced. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Once you receive the letter from the Small Business Administration, and they say your loan has been forgiven, you take it off the liability and it gets recorded as other revenue because it's a miscellaneous revenue. Does that make sense? All right. So here again, different types of liabilities, current liabilities and non-current liabilities, same definition applies. The time frame is 12 months. So if you get account payables, wages payable, interest payable, all those would be current liabilities because for the most part, they are due in less than 12 months and they have to be paid and realized. Non-current liabilities, these are typically loans that you get to finance your school building if you ever got into the loan business or things of that nature. Now, I would like to highlight one thing, something called unearned revenue. Does anybody know what unearned revenue is?
Donations?
No, they are not donations. Donations get recorded as a revenue, by the way, from tax purposes. They are considered revenue, but they're called other revenue or miscellaneous revenue, things of that nature. They're not stemmed from normal school operation offering educational services to the donors. So what do we mean by unearned revenue? Any takers? I need to pick on my principal. Is Brother Ziad on the call?
This not outstanding invoices, is it? That's not the.
No. So let's say, for example, you've got a parent who again comes in, try to register 2 or 3 children. His total invoice become $15,000. He cuts you a check for $15,000. Did he actually receive services for worth the $15,000? No, he did not. Could he actually pull his kids and get a refund? He can. And since this situation can occur and he can ask for a refund, it's a liability. So you'll have to account for it in your balance sheet. And so what you would do basically is, what is your refund policy? If my refund policy, you are responsible for the first quarter, then I will record the first quarter as a revenue because there's no way he's getting that cash back. But I will record 75% of the rest of the invoice as a liability in the category of unearned revenue. Come the next quarter, I will take 1 quarter of that, record it as a revenue, and decrease my unearned revenue by half. Does that make sense? This is very accurate accounting process where you could actually account and project. Because again, I really don't want to be in the middle of the school year and somebody say, I'm going to pull my kid, now I have to cut a check for $10,000. I mean, that's a lot of money to do in the middle of the year. Any questions on liabilities so far? All right. Now, equity, again, is recognized on the balance sheet. That's the amount of money that would be returned to the company's shareholders. But in your case, it will be something that the school would return, where in case of liquidation, if you liquidate the whole thing, sell the building, sell everything, and pay off the debt, that's the type of money that remains with you. All right, so that's called equity. So there are 3 important financial statements that any school ideally should look at least if not the all board members and the principal, but at least your treasurer should be aware of that and make sure that these are looked at every month. You got income statement, statement of cash flows, and a balance sheet. Can someone tell me what the difference is between income statement and balance sheet? Okay, let's go through the rest of the presentation. I'll highlight that as we move forward. Okay, in an income statement, you have 2 major categories. You've got revenues, you've got expenses, and the difference between your revenues and expenses is considered your net income. All right. And so the revenue could be an operating revenue, as we said, could be a tuition, could be a school event that you are making, collecting ticket prices for and everything else. Or it could be a non-operating revenue that could be donations or things of that nature. Your expenses, again, could be operating expenses. That's your salaries, health insurance, benefit package, whichever the building cost, things of that nature. Or it could be a non-operating expense. Like, for example, I want to offer an employee retreat. Well, that's a non-operating expense, but it will be labeled under that category. You take the revenue minus the expenses, you get your net income. All right. Income statement is over a duration of time. This is not one single point of time. So I do an income statement from August 1st to August 31st, for example. That's your income statement. In the contrary, balance sheet looks at your balance of assets, liabilities, and equities at one point of a time. So the balance sheet, if you look at any balance sheet, it will say as of, for example, December 31st, or as of August 31st. It's one single point of time. Compared to an income statement where I can say the income statement for the month of August, which is August 1st to August 30th. Here are the revenues that we have recorded. Here are the expenses that we have incurred. This is our net income. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So this is an example of an income statement. Revenues. Well, this is an industrial company, or they were selling goods. For you, this will be a tuition. Okay, because that's where the main bulk of revenue. And you could have donation set as a non-operating income. Once you have your income labeled here, then you go to your taxes, to your expenses, sorry, and see what type of expenses have you incurred. The difference between your revenue and expenses will give you the net income. Okay. Now, remember, we are using accrual-based accounting, for example. And so if I have 100 students or 150 students, my net income in the first month of the school could be thousands of dollars because I'm recording a revenue of 500, 600,000. These are all open invoices for the students. Does that make sense? But you will not have $500,000-$600,000 in cash in your bank account. So the cash flow is not going to materialize itself there. All right, statement of cash flows. Cash could come either from operating activities. These are, the bread and butter of what you do every day in the school because of the tuition and so on and so forth. Or they could come from investing activities. If your school owns another building, let's say, for example, and they have shops and you're renting it and that rental is an income to the school, then that's called cash from investing activities. And it needs to be labeled as such. Or it could be cash from financing activities. You could have borrowed loan or cash advance from a credit line or a credit card or whatever the case may be, then it becomes cash from financing activities. Now, why is it important actually to, go ahead, Sister Magda, you had a question.
I just want to make a comment about the activities that are not school related, that they are taxable.
That's a good question. They are taxable to the extent that they are taxable to. So let's say if you have a banquet dinner, we do a banquet dinner, for example, for our school every year. Okay. What we have to report from tax purposes is how much did we pay for the food in that particular banquet dinner. And we have to deduct that out of the ticket that we have sold. So if I'm selling a ticket for $1,000, but my average food plate is sitting at $50, then the only thing I can offer the donor is a tax receipt for $995 or $955 or $50.
That's not what I meant. That I meant if we're collecting money. So for instance, if I'm renting out my gymnasium, the money I collect from that rent, I have to pay income tax on.
You have pay income tax if you have categorized it as income coming from investing activities.
Yes, and if I've published my own textbooks and I'm selling it to 4 different schools, that's not part of my education. Just so schools know, we're not always tax exempt, and we do have to pay tax on certain income if it doesn't have to do with the operation of our school.
Yes, and it depends on what your classification in the tax code as well.
Okay. I'm gonna have to excuse myself for 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
So can I ask, so does that include nonprofit, if we're designated as a nonprofit school and we have activities after school like karate or something like that? I mean, it's not necessarily operation, but it is something like after school clubs or someone else is renting our space downstairs. You're saying that is taxed?
Well, if it is an after school club, it's considered a school operation.
And if it's not, what if someone is renting the space from us and they're doing their own activities?
Then it needs to be reported as part of your investing activities. And then most likely it will be taxed. But you'll have to consult actually with your tax person. I would say you have to consult with your tax person because I'm not going to offer just an advice on how taxes need to be portrayed for any particular school versus the other.
Right, but this is something that you're saying.
But from an accounting, from an accounting purposes, this money, this cash that you have received will have to be reported as cash from investing activities. They are not your typical operation. Now, if you're offering the after school club to the students and you're collecting fees from them, and then you are paying the instructor or you're paying the teacher or you're paying for the space, all these are operational and they're not taxed.
So what's the difference then between that and say donation? Like if someone is just giving us donation, they're not using the space or anything, so that's a different bracket.
Yes, the
Um,
donation will go under financing activities, so to speak, because they are actually trying to finance your existence as a school.
So then, okay, versus this one, someone is using facilities for their own purposes, and I'm making, but technically I'm looking at it as a source of revenue or a source of donation.
Yes, and so it goes back to what the purpose of the school is. Remember, the purpose of the school is to deliver educational activities. The purpose of the school is not to, for example, run a real estate business. And so if I own another location and I would like to rent it, that rental is an investing activity, because that place and that rental is not within the scope of what I'm licensed for. I'm licensed as an educational institution. And so I offer educational activities, and those are billed and collected as a tuition and so on and so forth. And I collect donations from our community members, for example, to support the school venture, not necessarily to support a real estate investment, so to speak. Does that make sense?
I see. So when you gave that example, it makes sense. Like if we buy the property next door and then we rent it out, okay, that's different. I see what you're.
Yes, that's exactly
I'm
right.
just kind of confused about like the use of space within the school. It's a means for us to generate more income simply because, you know, we're trying to be self-sustaining. So I'm kind of confused, but I think that a CPA can kind of answer better. But this the
Yes.
example that you gave made sense. Thank you.
And it all really depends on how these transactions are actually recorded.
I see.
Because the tax return will be filed based on your accounting books. And so it all goes back to how this particular piece of data will be entered into your accounting software. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Now, projections of cash flows will be very important, because you would need to know at one particular month, I'm going to run out of cash funds. And that will be also very helpful for you also in realizing the importance of having an emergency fund, you know, a rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it. But at one point, you need to be prepared that, God forbid, you ran out of cash. What is my contingency plan here if I want to keep the school afloat at that particular point of time? This is, again, statement of cash flows. You got three major categories. You get cash flow from operating activities, cash flow from investing activities, and then cash flows from financing activities. This is the most important slide probably in today's presentation. And this is the basic accounting equation. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. All right, that's what makes your balance sheet. Assets on one particular side of the equation, and then liabilities and equity on the other side of the equation. Both sides of the equation should be equal. That's why it's called the balance sheet, okay? Because it's balanced. The difference is always zero. If the difference is not zero, you've got something wrong with your balance sheet. All right, and you have to get back and make sure that you have got all the numbers in the right place for it. So let's give an example. You got a school building that you bought for 100,000. This 100,000 will impact your assets because you have acquired an asset, a building, for the price of 100,000. So it will be recorded as an asset. Let's say that you did not have enough money actually to buy the whole school with 100,000. You decided to go to an Islamic bank, get an Islamic loan, and you borrowed from them 80,000. The 80,000 that you borrowed from the bank will be recorded as a liability because it's a loan. You'll eventually have to pay it, okay? So in order to make the equation balanced, it means you have put in a 20% down payment, and that's your equity. Your equity is 20,000. Does that make sense? So now I'm going to report the school building as 100,000 in the assets, but it's balanced on the other side of the equation with 80,000 in loan and a 20,000 of down payment. Does that make sense? Now, let's say the next month you make a payment for $1,000. All right. Your liability will go down by 1,000. Your equity goes up by 1,000. Does that make sense? And so that way, the equation is still balanced. It's still 100,000 on the assets and 100,000 on the liability and equity. Are we clear on that concept? This is the fundamental piece, the most important equation in the field of accounting. All right. And so if you look at the balance sheet and you see differences between assets, liabilities, and equities, is just in a 30-second glance, quick look, you would always say, okay, there's something wrong with this balance sheet. This balance sheet is not balanced. All right. So this is an example of balance sheet. List assets. As we said, current assets go first. Then you have the fixed assets. These are the property, plant, and equipment. And then on the other side of the equation, you've got liabilities. You've got current and long-term debt or long-term liabilities, and you've got the equity. Assets equals liabilities and equity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. All right. Here are some budgeting tips. I think it looks weird for a board member to say this, but hey, you got to say it. You've got to meet with your principal. All right. In a process, what we call like a budget hearing, so to speak, just see what his asks are. What is he planning to do for next year? If you have a strategic plan and you say, well, I want to invest in technology and I want to have a state-of-the-art computer lab, and I want to make sure that I deploy iPads to all of my students or whatever the case may be, that project, as part of your strategic planning, will need to be budgeted for in your budget. All right. You will need to prioritize proposed projects. This is not like an open buffet dining, so to speak, is whatever I need, I can just get. You've got to set a priority, which is which project has priority number one strategically for the school, and then you go ahead and budget for it and try to make it happen. My humble advice to each one of you is budget each project separately. All right. Have an estimate of all possible costs to that project. Anything that could cost you money to get that project up and running needs to be accounted for. Once you determine the cost, then determine what is your markup. For example, let's say a vendor approached your school and said, I want to offer lunch to your students. Okay. And then the school said, well, maybe that could be another source of revenue for the school. So what they do is, well, maybe I can mark that lunch up and say, I'm getting it for $5. I'm going to add a juice to it, repackage it, and then offering it to the students. You could mark it up for what, 15%, 20%, 25%, I don't know, whichever percentage that you have in mind that could generate a reasonable revenue for you for the school, that would be your markup. And then you could estimate what your net proceeds out of that particular initiative is. For example, I can tell you in our school, we wanted to have each middle school student have a laptop. So if each one of them went into 6th grade, had a laptop given to them, and it stayed with them 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And when they graduated, they kept the laptop. Okay. We figured that the laptop is going to cost us about $500, maybe $550. And if you add a Microsoft Office setup into it and this and that, maybe at best about $600. We charged the students $150 per year during their middle school. So they paid essentially $450. And I, as a school, have just tolerated $150 for all the 3 years. That's about $50 per year, but it was a great service for the students, and they kept their laptop when they graduated. Again, you've got to think of all the costs, determine what your markup is, figure out if you want to make it a break-even project or you want to have proceeds out of it, and pull it forward. And then determine where you want to fund that particular project. Remember, in Islamic schools, what is number one challenge for us when it comes to budgeting and accounting? Number one challenge. I don't know, I'm the only board member here probably, but I have a heartburn typically toward the summer.
Yep, summertime is usually the hardest.
Yes. I mean, I lose some night sleeps when I was a chair for the school board when it comes into the summer, because you essentially have no revenue. School is closed, you've got salaries going, and Ramadan used to happen around that time, and donations. So you're dealing with a lot of uncertainty when it comes to your funds. Okay. And so determine the source of funding when you prioritize your project is going to be very important. If you have a small project, you could raise funds for it separately to get it executed. You could. If you want to put it as part of the budget, then you really need to make sure that does not come at the expense of something else that is critical to the operation of the school.
Can I make a comment, brother?
Yes, please.
Paula, when you asked, I didn't think of the summer. We usually have a payroll crunch in December and April when you have the 3 pay periods if you're every 2 weeks. But for our summer, we charge all of our fees in May. And so that covers the summer usually. In order for people to hold their spot for August, they have to pay their fees in May. And so that's usually been a way to get through the summer for us.
That's a great way. Maybe I need to look into that, but thanks for the suggestion. I think I'll just have to rally our parents to sign up for that, well, instead of going for a summer vacation.
Because we have a waiting list. If they don't pay, they know they'll lose their spot after May 15th. So it's been fairly easy for us to collect the fees.
Sure. I certainly appreciate that suggestion.
The book fees and all the other fees, they are paid in May.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
So so we do the same thing, but it doesn't cover much because we're such a small school. Has this been the case from the beginning, Sister Majda? Like when your school was still small, like year one?
We're still small. So, and also Ramadan being before the summer, the money comes in, but everything we raise in Ramadan is specifically to cover scholarships. So it's for the next fiscal year. So that, and our year ends June 30th. So between what we raise in Ramadan and the fees in May, it covers July and August for us.
So you don't use the Ramadan, oh, that's very interesting. So your Ramadan fund is specifically
for the following year.
And when you say scholarships, you mean financial aid for students who are in need?
Yes.
Okay.
Tuition assistance.
Okay, and then what about your operation cost? I mean, does your tuition cover that? Your building costs, or maintenance?
No, we have other fundraisers during the year, but Ramadan specifically goes towards tuition assistance for the following year.
Oh, I see. So you have other fundraisers. This isn't your 1 year fundraiser.
No. Ramadan is separate than our others.
Gotcha.
Great discussion. Any other questions? Okay, here are some best practices. Try to maximize collection. 5 years ago, when I joined the school as a school board member, we did not have a particular way of collecting tuition. You know, whoever parent wants to pay by credit card, they pay. They want to drop a check, they drop. They want to drop a cash, they can. This month I have, next month, inshallah, next month. And then, you know, there's an inshallah of American, there's inshallah of the Muslim people. And so so you get into that cult of saying, you know, I don't have a collection. Now, well, you don't have a collection, but I have a payroll that I have to meet up. I have teachers who have families, I have homes open and everything else. And so we didn't have a good process. So what we have done 5 years ago, we said, okay, at the beginning of the school year, you'll have to give me either a bank account or a credit card, period. There's no cash, no checks to be dropped to the office. Everybody will go on an automatic payment. so we can determine actually a more accurate cash flow projections for our school. And that worked out very well. We went from about $250 average collection per student to about $420. So I think this has been very helpful for us. Set up a follow-up strategy. You charge at the, let's say, on the 5th of the month. By the 10th, you would know whose draft has returned, whose checks has bounced back. Make sure you have appropriate follow-up. If you have a late fee, feel free to charge it, and you'll go after them for it, so they know that this does not go without a consequence. Make sure that you reconcile your accounts every month. Subhanallah, in 2020, I was doing a April reconciliation between all bank accounts we have, between the actual bank and the accounting software that we have. And we discovered 2 forged checks that were cashed out of our bank account. And we looked back at the pictures. They forged my signature. They forged Brother Siad's signature. We went back to the bank. We claimed it. The only way you could pick it up is because of a reconciliation. Because if I didn't cut the check through the accounting software, there is no way on earth you will have a matching transaction unless someone deliberately went and deleted it, which the software will give you an audit trail to discover. And so we approached the bank, we provided the evidence, and we got the money back. So make sure the reconciliation process happens every month. It's a check and balance in your system. It's extremely important. Set up the right governance structure for your accounting in the school. Who handles accounting? Who goes over the statements? Who shares the statements? What information is shared? All these are important in terms of governance. For example, we have 3 authorized signatories on the bank account for the school that we serve on. One is for the school board chair, one is for the treasurer, and one for the school principal. So if I'm traveling out of town, if I'm traveling in an international travel, school operation doesn't stop. You've got 2 other people who could actually sign checks. Each check, for all practical purposes, my humble advice to you, shouldn't bear only 1 signature. Check should bear 2 signatures. 2 individuals have to agree that this check needs to be issued. All right. And so typically, if you have a treasurer and he heavily involved in your accounting, then the principal and the treasurer can sign. Treasurer is not there, the chair, school board chair can sign, but at least you need to have 2 sets of eyes looking at these checks. Get them signed before they come out. Again, whenever you are in doubt, please check with your CPA. I check with my CPA every 2 to 3 months. I get a weird scenario that I don't know what to account for, how to do it. I'll just go back to them, make sure I don't goof up the books. That's the last thing I want to have, is to get into an orange jumpsuit because the IRS is just showing on the door of the school saying we have a problem. All right, so make sure you get your CPA on your side. Feel free to call them and ask them questions. Any questions so far? I think I have 14 minutes left, and I just want to share with you the case and just a brief exercise real quick. But any questions?
I just want to recommend that everybody should have a financial procedures like handbook. So that everything is documented, and if anybody leaves or comes, everything is clearly stated in a handbook that really meets accountants' review and auditors' review, so that it's everything is clear.
That's a great suggestion. Let me see. All right. Can you all see this Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
I'm going to try to make it as simplistic as possible. There is a case study that I may need to post for you in the chat so you can follow along. Well, It's not showing up. Let's see. You still see a Microsoft Word document or a spreadsheet?
The
Word doc-
document, the spreadsheet's gone.
Okay, all right. So let's go over the case study, and then I'll buzzle it here into the spreadsheet. You got a school X planning to open its door to the community on August 1st with a projected student body of 100 and the following capacities. You've got early childhood education, you've got an elementary segment, you've got a middle school segment. Tuition structure that was agreed upon in the last school board meeting. You've got the tuition structure for each of these particular schools that you have. Refund policy is being based on a quarterly commitment. School employs 25 staff members, including principal and office manager. Payroll has been set up as bi-monthly. Total estimated cost of $600,000, including taxes and processing fees. Benefit package includes $2,400 of health insurance allowance per employee and $250 per staff professional development annually. School days are set for 200 days per calendar year. School has signed up for automatic withdrawal for all utility bills. Historically, this has been averaged about $1,500 a month. They hired a firm to provide janitorial services to the school. They have been set at $100 per school day. School will accept payment from parents via check, ACH, or credit card. Accounting software is expected to charge 2.5% of processing fee. Historically, 10% of the parent body use the credit card services. School will offer a digital platform to the parent body for communication and grades that's set at a cost of $10 per student for 12 months. The bookstore vendor provided an estimate of $200 per student to provide necessary textbooks as well as workbooks. Principal and office manager estimates the office classroom supplies to be around $1,200 a month when the school is in session and $500 when the school is off. School building is 10 years old, purchased at $1.2 million, and the estimated maintenance cost is about $25,000 annually. A local vendor is going to supply to the school lunch 3 times a week at a cost of $5 per meal, and they are expecting a 60% enrollment for that particular program. So these are some variables. I'm not saying that this is all the variables, but these are some variables. We're going to take this and try to materialize that into income statement, balance sheet, and a cash flow projection. I'm sure you can see my spreadsheet right now. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So number of students for early childhood education was set at 25 at a cost of $6,500. And it's good. Once you invest time in building your spreadsheet, typically all what you need then is just to change numbers, change the variables, and everything will map out. But make sure you've got the right equations and the cells for that particular statement. In elementary school, we are expecting 50 students at the cost of $6,000 per year. And then in middle school, we are expecting 25 students at the cost of $7,000 per year. All right, so if we stop right here, what you're gonna see in the income statement, your total revenue, the tuition, is $637,500. That came from the total invoices for all the 3 segments of the school. Are you following?
Yes.
All right. If I take this, and because the school year is for 10 months, for example, and I go back to the cash flow here, this has been divided by 10, you're expecting a revenue of $63,750, provided no single parent has actually made an advance payment. If everybody is going on a monthly withdrawal, that's what you're gonna expect. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're starting the school with a beginning cash balance of $75,000. Okay, that's what you have in the bank to start with. So let's keep moving. We figured out the number of students and what their monthly payment. Let's go to the expenses right now. Number of staff in the school is 25 teachers. their payroll is set at 600,000. That makes a monthly payment of payroll of 50,000. If you go down here to the income statement, your expenses, you have incurred 50,000 of the payroll. And on your cash flow, you're going to have 50,000 coming out of your bank account because of the payroll. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Each teacher has $2,400 of health insurance per year. You multiply that by 25 staff members, your monthly is sitting at $5,000 of health insurance commitment. That also gets labeled here in the income statement as 5,000, and you have 5,000 coming from your bank account in the cash flow. All right. Each teacher also gets $250 of professional development. That's about $520 per month. Now, you may not spend it in August. This is, again, budgeted, projected for the future. You may have only, you know, I'm going to send them to CISNA conference. It's only happening in 1 month, and you move that budget in there. But for all practical purposes, if I want to spread it around, it's about $520 per month. That goes here into the income statement as an expense and comes out of your cash flow. All right. Utilities have been averaged at about $1,500 a month. Again, comes into the income statement and your cash flows. Janitorial services are set at $100 per day. And you've got 200 school days, setting the monthly payment at $1,667. Janitorial services gets mapped up to the income statement. This money comes out of your cash flow. All right, what else we have? We have a technology cost. That's for the communication platforms. That's a $10 per student. So the total cost is $12,000 for the year, and that would give you a monthly payment of $1,000 for it. Gets logged in here, and $1,000 comes off your cash flow. Okay. What else we have? We have books, and the books have been set up as $200 per student. Your total cost comes to $20,000 because books are incurred in the first month. So the whole $20,000 goes out of the first month, and the $20,000 comes out of your cash flow. All right. And you wouldn't have any book fee for the rest of the year, not book fee, but book expense. What else we have? Office and classroom supplies. We have got, when the school is in session, it's 500, sorry, when the school is in session, it's $1,200, and it's $500 when the school is off session. All right, so if you look here, supplies, $1,200 when the school is in session for the 10 months. Once you hit the summer and the school is not in session, you've got $500 listed for the summer. All right. The processing fee is set at 2.5% for your credit card. So the 0.025. Put your total cost at $1,593 for the whole year. You amortize it over the 10-month period, and it becomes $159, and it gets labeled here for the cash flow. All right. So now I have repairs and maintenance. Sorry, I haven't added that. Repairs and maintenance sitting at $25,000. Actually, I have spilled the beans for this. Sorry. All right. Any questions so far?
No, but you've inspired me to get started on my taxes.
Now, you've got the lunch program. Lunch is set at $5. lunch days have been determined to be 120 days. And you're expecting 60% of your students to actually sign up for it. All right. That gives you $36,000 of lunch revenue. It was actually $36,000 of lunch cost. Okay. And that will need to be divided here by, I'm going to take this cell and divide it by 10. And that puts it at $3,600 of cost for the lunch right here. Now, for you as a school administrator, you want to make sure that I'm making money on the lunch. You want to mark it up. So if you want to mark it up, then that's where the lunch revenue comes in here. Does that make sense? So you will have lunch revenue comes in here and a lunch revenue comes into cash flow. I know that we are short of time, but I need to highlight one thing here fairly quickly. If you look at your revenues and you look at your expenses and look at the ending cash balance, the ending cash for this month, for example, is cell C52 and C54. So that is basically your net cash plus your existing cash in the bank. That gives you the 54,000. You take this and you carry it over to the next month because that becomes your beginning cash balance. If you look at this, June and July, you are expected to run a deficit. And again, I would like to emphasize that you have not factored in donation money yet. And you have not factored in your emergency fund if you do have an emergency fund or a rainy fund day. But it just highlights the importance of why you need a cash flow projection like this, why you need accurate accounting to know what you exactly have and how you can redeploy resources based on what your priorities are and what your strategic goals are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, very good. It's very clear now.
Great. Well, I will stop sharing right now and see if there's any residual questions. I believe we are at time.
This has been really good to know, like how to know where you stand. Because I've always found it very confusing. You know, in my school, I wasn't privy to any of this. And I had never taken an accounting class in my college years. So this definitely has helped make the murky waters a bit more clear. I mean, it's necessary, absolutely necessary for planning. You know, the general rule was always don't spend any money and we don't have any money, but that's not feasible. You know, you have to be able to know that you have something to work with so that you could establish what your priorities are and have them be realistic. Anybody else care to comment?
I'm a firm believer of poor planning predicts poor performance.
Indeed.
This was very helpful. Jazakumullah khair. I mean, we have something very similar that we go off, but I like how yours flows a little bit easier. Is there a way to share that that with us so we can kind of plug in our own numbers and see how it flows?
Sure.
I mean, I know that each school can tweak it to their own, but it would be very. Thank you.
Yeah, Sister Susan has all the documents. She can certainly feel free to share it.
But there's nothing can replace that you were actually there to help guide us through. We do have other people that are enrolled in the Leadership Institute, and unfortunately they're not here today, but I think it's been so worthwhile for all of us who have been in attendance. So thank you so much. Anybody else, any comments or questions before we go?
I have a CPA question. I don't know if I can ask you now or I should email you later, but the $2,400 health allowance, what if they don't use it for health insurance?
It's only in our school, the policy dictates is if you pay a premium and you bring us a receipt that you actually paid a premium, we reimburse that on that basis up to $2,400 per month. Actually, no, and in our school is actually less, but this is hypothetical example.
Okay.
But you need to set your own policy because you need to be clear because that's part even of our contracts. And so when we got,
I did another school and some of the teachers would complain that they get it through their husband and that means I'm losing out on money, and it became a kind of a headache, but
No, if they give us a premium under their name, they make the payment out of their bank account, they get reimbursed for it up to the extent that we have approved the staff member for.
Okay.
But again, it's important. That's another governance piece that's important. You've got to have policy to dictate it. It needs to be in the contract, and that is a good practice to have.
Thank you so much, Brother Ahmed and Sister Magda, for sharing your wisdom with us today. It truly has been very valuable. And for everyone else, know that in our schedule for January, because of the West Coast Conference, we are going to have to make a change in our anticipated date of getting together on Saturday to the 29th, I believe it will be. We will confirm that with you and we can verify with everybody else. But because of the conflict in scheduling with the West Coast Forum, it's a virtual forum this year, we didn't want to be able to be broadcasting them at the same time. So we're going to push our date into January 29th. Again, thank you so much for your participation. The replay will be available as soon as I can process it. Everyone, happy holidays. Inshallah, you will have a chance to get caught up, reflect on life, and make your strategic plan for the coming year. Either way.
Jazakallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you so much, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care.
Thank you.